Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt. I lead the Nervos Foundation. We're a team that exists to support the ecosystem around CKB, blockchain with capabilities far beyond what anyone would expect. And contrary to almost all other smart contract platforms, CKB is secured by proof of work. The title of this talk is Building Beyond Web3, which begs the question, what would come after Web3? Anyone? Four is a great guess. The answer, surprisingly, is Web 5. What's commonly accepted, well, Web 5 was a term that was coined by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey 3 years ago to describe the idea of a synergistic relationship between Web 2 and Web 3. So while it's commonly accepted to describe the entire industry as Web 3, the way things are functioning in practice can vary significantly. And Web 5 actually gives us a great way of making sense of it all and identifying the most effective ways to separate concerns. It's no secret that a lot of what is being called Web 3 is running on Web 2 infrastructure. You can see here that Google Cloud is for Web 3 bidlers. And a few booths down, there's AWS, or Amazon Web Services. And it's something that's evident from even the most basic things. When you connect to an Ethereum dApp, MetaMask connects through Infura or a similar service to an Ethereum node. And a lot of times, these nodes are running on cloud servers which belong to the same companies that 10 years ago the Web3 pioneers set out to replace. And this is important nuance because we're seeing effectively the privatization of fundamental components of what would otherwise be a public network. And Bitcoin's vibrance in many ways can be attributed to its nature as a public system. It consists of a number of different nodes which come to consensus across the globe. This is a resource-intensive process, but it produces universal access and censorship resistance. Web 2 systems, however, they aren't burdened by this process, but they aren't censorship resistant. So it's natural that such different systems would have different costs and feel different to a user. However, it's often the case that the goals of these systems are getting mixed, and we see this endless compromise of decentralization and censorship resistance, while the Web 2 experience is kind of being created, something that's cheap and fast and feels familiar to users. And we can see this playing out in the explosion of new chains and rollups, the idea being more block space is needed to serve more users and keep fees low. But unfortunately, this is causing a number of negative effects. We have all these new assets and speculative markets in which these chains are competing for attention and liquidity while creating unmanageable complexity for users. And when we take this Web 2 kind of pursuit to the extreme, we see something like Base show up. It's an Ethereum rollup that's operated by a large, publicly traded company and runs a blockchain on traditional centralized web infrastructure. Now, Base is clearly a Web 2 system, but if we think in a Web 5 frame of mind, as a combination of Web 2 and Web 3 technologies, Base is actually forging a new path toward openness and auditability in a privately owned system. While Web 2 technologies can be used to make Web 3 cheaper and more responsive, it's also possible to make Web 3 features like verifiability and censorship resistance accessible from a familiar Web 2 environment. And we can see this by looking at Bitcoin. The proof of work of the chain can be quickly checked by any of us within a mobile app, within a web browser, or a desktop application. And with that proof of work alone, we have all that's needed to connect to Bitcoin's network of nodes. There's not even a need to sync the entire blockchain. We can choose to sync only blocks containing transactions that are relevant to us. And with this, we gather all the information that's necessary to create our own transactions. Now, CKB takes inspiration from Bitcoin, and it shares this paradigm. Recently, we've seen developers utilize the most common web component, the browser, to build some pretty novel things. This is Quantum Purse. It's a post-quantum wallet that connects directly to the network of CKB nodes and implements the cryptography necessary to protect users' assets from the quantum computers of the future. And this is Pocket Wallet, which allows Nostr users to send CKB-based assets directly to each other. Both of these are running directly in the browser. A user gets the web page from a server somewhere, but once they have it, it's functioning completely without dependencies on someone else's infrastructure. Now, in the last few years, there's been a proliferation of new systems using Ethereum's EVM on top of Bitcoin. I'm sure that these systems are employing a combination of Web 2 and Web 3 that looks just like the MetaMask example I showed earlier. But in our community, we hold the belief that the future of Bitcoin will be built using its unique technological strengths. Bitcoin's transaction model allows users to collaborate on transactions that are cryptographically binding, but they're also updatable. And this means we can create completely off-chain systems made up of potential transactions. And this is the backbone of a channel network like Lightning. I know Lightning has had quite a challenging road, but it's a system like no other in our industry, and its merits really do deserve to be recognized. I hope everyone saw recently that Steak and Shake was allowing people to buy burgers and fries using USDT and BTC. What might not have been apparent is that inside of Lightning, USDT was being converted immediately to BTC for a Shake Shack, or Steak and Shake. And this is because Lightning is a completely off-chain network. It isn't bound by the restrictions of an on-chain environment. Transactions can be much more powerful. Asset swaps can even be done completely off-chain. And the implications of this are massive because stablecoin issuance is coming to the world's financial service companies. We could see stablecoins issued for all of the world's currencies. We have the potential for thousands of equivalent independent assets from different issuers. It's really hard to estimate the complexity that we'll see in this kind of stablecoin-enabled world, but with Lightning, all of the swaps and different pairs can be managed in Web 2 systems versus using on-chain smart contracts. Now, because these swaps are happening off-chain in Lightning, it's even possible to swap between assets that are issued on different blockchains. And this is the basis of the Fiber network, a Lightning-compatible payment channel network that's being actively developed on CKB. It can support transactions involving BTC, stablecoins, and even NFTs, and something like this promises to radically change the way we think about Lightning. And building off-chain networks like Lightning or Fiber is something completely novel, and there are lots of opportunities for innovation. Even Satoshi imagined Bitcoin would scale with infrastructure that looked like Base, with a Bitcoin node requiring, say, a large server farm. BTC evolved in a completely different direction, and CKB followed in these footsteps, designed from the start to be a flexible base for off-chain systems. Instead of the EVM, CKB makes use of a RISC-V virtual machine. It's a little more challenging for developers, but it offers unmatched capability and adaptability. CKB is really the only blockchain I'm aware of that could be confidently described as future-proof. And recently, we've even seen Vitalik highlight CKB as an example of how he'd like to see Ethereum evolve. And the possibilities are endless. I showed an example with a post-quantum wallet and also a Nostra wallet. We've seen support added for Bitcoin script, for Taproot, and for other blockchains wallets through what are effectively smart contracts deployed permissionlessly to CKB. Last year, teams in the ecosystem connected CKB with Bitcoin through RGB++. It's a cross-chain design with no bridges. It uses CKB to verify Bitcoin's proof of work and to interpret data that's been added to the blockchain. The layer 2 hype has died down, but it's been encouraging to see that we can extend the capabilities of Bitcoin while relying only on Bitcoin security assumptions. This year, with the Fiber network and a new stablecoin, USDI, coming to CKB, developers within the ecosystem are turning their sights towards social media protocols like Nostr, and the goal is to build things like tools for sovereign digital communities and new ways for creators to monetize their work. CKB has had a slow and steady journey over the last 7 years, but it shows that it's possible to evolve decentralized systems by embracing traditions rather than rejecting it for scientific pursuits. Proof of work and Bitcoin's UTXO transaction model play an absolutely crucial role as far as we're concerned. Satoshi envisioned a future of user-owned open systems, and in spite of an ocean of blockchain development, this is still something that feels like a differentiated offering today. I invite you to join us in our work of combining Web 2's usability with Web 3's sovereignty with intention to build systems of the future under the banner of Web 5. A huge thank you to the organizers, and thank you all for your attention.